Because at the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't shit on other people, who has some interest in the American people, some interest in something beyond himself. I think at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive figure.
I'm just giving you the answer to the question you're asking all night long. Why do they vote for Donald Trump? It's not always because they like him. No. It's because stuff like that is kookier to them.
Here's a trimmed down, punchier version of your intro that keeps the heat but cuts the extra weight. Bill Maher just lit up Adam Schiff on live TV, brutally roasting the California senator for his nonstop war on Trump. The takedown was so savage, Schiff might never show his face on Maher's set again. If you're into raw political smackdowns like this, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss the fire. Want this in a more sarcastic or dramatic tone?
True justice. The only thing he cares about is himself and money, and going after the money is a way to bring about some real justice.
Adam Schiff kicked things off with his usual anti-Trump tirade, calling him a narcissist and insisting he was guilty beyond question. He painted Trump as a threat to democracy and warned that his return would be a national disaster. It was classic Schiff, all drama, little substance. But then he made a bold claim that's already aging like milk, and it's going to come back to haunt him.
Sharing your pessimism about this, or your pessimism about the general election, the reason why Joe Biden is going to beat Donald Trump is because at the end of the day, America is going to want a president who is a decent human being, who doesn't shit on other people, who has some interest in the American people, some interest in something beyond himself. I think at the end of the day, people are going to reject this bigoted, divisive figure.
Schiff kept piling on the insults, desperately trying to tear down Trump, but what's really making him squirm now is his bold prediction that Joe Biden would win in a landslide. Fast forward, and Trump is back in the White House, proving Schiff spectacularly wrong. His once confident boasts have aged like spoiled milk, leaving him scrambling for excuses and looking completely out of touch. It's pure political karma in action, and honestly, it's been a joy to watch. Even Bill Maher looked fed up, barely keeping his composure. While Stephen Smith couldn't hold back, he let Schiff have it.
Seeing so much stuff targeted in his direction, but somehow, some way, he still survives. I mean, we're talking about a situation where he's still going to be the GOP nominee. He's still going to be running for president. You're President Biden. That's the individual that you're going to have to beat. 4 indictments, 91 counts. They ain't even bringing up the bankruptcies, ain't even bringing up this particular issue with this civil case, and somehow, some way, he puts cats to shame because he clearly has more than 9 lives. I mean, come on.
Before Bill Maher even grabs the mic, Stephen Smith jumps in swinging. No filter, no hesitation. He torches Adam Schiff and his political allies for their obsessive, years-long crusade to take down Donald Trump. They've thrown the kitchen sink at him. Media smears, non-stop investigations, ancient scandals dragged back to life and over the top, comparisons to dictators. They've called him Hitler, branded him a danger to democracy, and hurled every accusation under the sun. But here's the kicker, Trump didn't just survive. He thrived. Against all odds, he's back and bolder than ever. Trump remains the unsolvable puzzle that the Democrats and their media allies just can't crack. Every time they think they've buried him, he comes back swinging harder. Love him or hate him, he's the political juggernaut they can't stop, and that fact alone is driving them insane. Then Maher steps in, and what follows is pure destruction.
Last year, and it was called Separating Sports by Sex Doesn't Make Sense.
Right.
And talked about how we separate sports like the WNBA and just because it's just socialization. This is insane.
I agree.
Okay. That's why people vote for Trump. Mm-hmm. Because there's stuff like that on the left that people just go, I know Trump's horrible, but separating by sports by sex makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And if you think it doesn't, you can't leave the country.
Maher didn't waste a second. He went straight for the jugular. Looking Schiff dead in the eye, he laid out exactly why Americans keep rallying behind Donald Trump. No sugarcoating, no filters. Maher slammed the Democrats for their hollow policies, out-of-touch ideology, and a growing disconnection from real, everyday people. One example hit especially hard: the push to erase biological differences in sports, forcing men and women to compete in the same categories. To many Americans, that wasn't progressive, it was downright insane. Instead of listening to the overwhelming backlash, Democrats dismissed it all as bigotry and doubled down. Maher called it what it is: ideological extremism that turns voters away. He argued that when people are forced to choose between confusion and someone who at least speaks their language of reality, even if it's Trump, they'll pick reality every time.
Ongoing political tensions and Trump's actions toward his critics, do you think President Biden's preemptive pardons turned out to be more important than initially expected? Let's first tell people what that means, preemptive pardons. That was pretty unprecedented, right? Before he left office, Joe Biden pardoned you and a number of people who he thought Trump would go after.
No, I take the opposite view. I don't think he should have given the pardons at all.
Really?
No, I don't think he should have, and I was vocal about that at the time.
Can you refuse a pardon?
That's less clear because in the case of the January 6th committee, he pardoned essentially the whole.
Wait, did Senator Adam Schiff just throw Joe Biden under the bus? Because that's exactly what it sounded like. Schiff, who was knee-deep in the January 6th committee circus, conveniently received a pardon along with several others on the panel who spent years pointing fingers. But here's the twist. If everything the committee did was supposedly legit, why did Biden need to hand out preemptive pardons at all? Now Schiff is subtly implying the pardon wasn't even necessary, basically hinting that Biden jumped at the gun and screwed up, without saying it outright.
And arrested the judge. No, I haven't heard that. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever read arrested a judge. So is this significant?
Well, I think
I'm not going to comment on something I don't know more about than what you've just told me.
You read about it too.
Yeah, I mean, I read about it, but I don't know.
So you don't trust anything either, and you work for the New York Times.
Well,
Even Brett Stevens, a New York Times insider, can't fully trust his own paper's reporting. Just let that sink in. When the journalists inside the building are questioning their own headlines, you know the media machine is broken beyond repair. This is exactly why millions of Americans, including Trump himself, have ditched mainstream outlets and turned to independent media. The sad truth? Nearly every major network in the country feels compromised, especially by the left. What were once respected watchdogs holding power to account have become echo chambers pushing carefully curated narratives. It's not journalism anymore, it's political theater with a press pass. Every crack in the mainstream media's mask just proves what many of us have known all along. If you want the truth, you won't find it in the establishment. You'll have to go outside the system they built. Want me to keep going with the next?
Popular now, even with people who aren't Catholic, because it's the last place you can send your kid to get an old school education. And they just tell the kids, forget about the Jesus stuff. Just, to them, that's okay indoctrination, as opposed to some of the other indoctrination that goes on. And also, the Catholics don't put up with bullshit. They take your phone. You have to learn your P's and Q's and your grammar and all this kind of stuff. And that's what I just don't understand, that parents don't have the whip hand anymore. Not that you should actually use a whip. And I don't have kids, so I don't know that firsthand, but every movie and TV show that has a teenager in it cannot be mischaracterizing this. And the kids they don't listen to their parents, they turn their back on them, they walk out of the room, things that would just get me shut down.
Well, we all remember when the unraveling began, when Democrats went all in on woke ideology and tossed morality and common sense straight into the shredder. That's when the culture nosedived. Suddenly, kids were treated like mini adults and fathers were reduced to clueless punchlines. Turn on any family sitcom and you'd see it. The bumbling dad, the barely holding it together mom, and the smug kid who somehow knew everything. It wasn't just entertainment anymore, it was subtle indoctrination. Over time, it bred a generation that scoffs at authority and shrugs off accountability. Discipline became offensive, boundaries disappeared, and respect for family structure disintegrated. The moral compass that once guided our society, replaced by performative progressivism, and now we're paying the price. These cultural missteps didn't just shape minds, they cost them the 2024 election. Just listen to what one of their own.
Fact that you don't share my pessimism, I truly do. I understand where you're coming from. But I think that's part of the problem. I think the Democratic Party should share my pessimism. I think they should be on high alert. I think they need to treat him with the seriousness that it deserves, because you having a lot of faith in the American people. The man did get over 74 million votes. You've got people that are looking at Joe Biden. I'm not going to call him a cognitive mess or anything like that. That's very disrespectful. I would never speak about our president that way. But when you're 82 years of age, it's not offensive to say you're no longer a spring chicken and you don't seem
beyond their wild ideology. Schiff and his allies spent years convincing America that Joe Biden was mentally sharp enough to lead. Despite glaring red flags and warnings from both parties, they doubled down, shielding him from scrutiny and dismissing any concern as partisan noise. But it wasn't fine. And by the time reality punched through the spin, it was too late. Panic set in their grand plan, Kamala Harris. A last-ditch Hail Mary that blew up in their faces. Her approval ratings nosedived, her speeches backfired, and her leadership was a punchline, not a solution. The party that once bragged about being strategic is now out of moves, left cleaning up a mess of its own making. From woke overreach and tone-deaf decisions to backing a visibly unfit president, they've alienated the very voters they claim to champion. Bill Maher and Stephen A. Smith's outrage isn't just personal, it reflects a national wake-up call. People are done with the gaslighting, done with the media spin,